So I think that the 2025 market could be defined by one word, which is difficult. It was a very challenging year for everybody: brokers, realtors, homeowners, renters. Everyone really went through the ringer this year. I think about a couple of things. The developer, let's say, who's building a new condo, they really struggled because the investor has essentially left the building. There are no investors anywhere in Toronto. There was a time, I think, when it was just part of a normal real estate relationship. You'd go in, you'd help a developer get the units sold, and so that they could now build them, and then they would probably try and maybe resell them through an assignment, or they'd hold them for tenants down the road, and that's now changed. I mean, the interest rates have gone up significantly. It makes it less palatable for investors. Rents have actually come down nationally. That makes it a little tougher. And I think about when I first was looking at pre-construction, I mean, there was a point in time when you could do the math on the back of an envelope and say, well, if I bought this unit, I'll be ahead $100 or $200 a month. That's fantastic. And then it got to a point where it was like kind of break even, and people would say, okay, it's breaking even. That's still okay because it's appreciating in value, and that's awesome. And then it got down to, well, I'm $100 in the hole or $200 in the hole. Well, I do the math. Is it appreciating more than $12,000? Is it appreciating more than $24,000? Yeah, probably is. It still makes a good value. And then we really got into that place where it was like, maybe you're down $1,000 a month. And at this point, people are saying, you know what, it's not probably the thing that I want as an investment, but what I will do is I'll buy it, I'll hold it, I'll wait till the very bitter end, and then I'll assign it to somebody else who can then pick up the pieces. And that's great. But that's essentially shut off. Now, what I see right now is there are a couple projects, they've shifted gears. They're creating buildings where end users are going to come, because I think we're still going to see people who want to downsize, and if there's nothing for them, then creating a new sort of building for downsizers makes a ton of sense. There are a lot of people out there who are going back to work, that sort of return to the office thing going on. And that's challenged because, during the pandemic, they all left for bigger houses, bigger space, and that may be way out of town. I actually had a client, or an agent had a client who, bought an hour outside the city, and now they're being asked to go back to the office. Well, their house has now dropped value, and they're being asked to go back to the city, and the commute's going to kill them. So there's a real sort of change going on in the environment. In terms of rentals, this is a really interesting thing because there was a point in time when if you had a rental client, you'd say, I'm going to find you 3 places, I'm going to take you out, you have to have all your paperwork in order, you're going to pick one, and we're going to do the deal then and there. And that was the speed and the veracity of the rental market, and that's completely changed now. I hear from agents who have clients that say, well, let's look downtown. You know what? I think I'd like to look at the west. What do you got in the west? Let's go to the east. There's so much product on the market. People have a lot of time, so there's a lot of frustration for landlords and a lot of frustration for agents who aren't doing the deals. So those are sort of big ticket items that are happening right now in terms of like the resale value. If you live in a great neighborhood, like where I live, for instance, High Park, which is right downtown west, stuff does sell quickly. We're not getting 20, 30 offers like we used to get. We're getting 2, 3 offers, or maybe even 1 offer, but it's pretty close to asking. So this is the hope that right now we're in a situation where a buyer can take their time. They don't have to make the decision right then and there. They don't have to rely on the listing agent's home inspection or something. They have time to make a decision, and that's really great. So more of a balanced market that I see going on right now, and there are different types of houses that are selling quicker. I think that townhouses, detached houses in the downtown core are still doing pretty well. The 905, which is sort of outside the city, is challenging, and I think that we're still going to see some price adjustments there, and prices have been going down there. But in good neighborhoods, not shoulder neighborhoods, not on major intersections, or major thoroughfares, we're still seeing stuff selling reasonably. So when I think about the agents that work at KIC and how they kind of show up to talk to their clients, one of the things that I've really pushed is being informed, having agents really know what's going on in the market. So every week I'll send out a message to everybody saying, hey, these are 5 articles that you should really read, digest, and understand, because they talk a little bit about the whole market. Real estate, as much as it is sort of local, there are all these big picture things that happen all around it. What's going on in the Ukraine? What's going on in the States? What's going on, in Greenland? All these things play a critical role in educating your clients. And so, I remember when I first got my real estate license, now going back 30 years. The trainers would say, when someone asks you how the market is, you say, oh, the market's great. Whether you're buying or selling, the market's great. And that's not 100% accurate. I think what you want to do is be truthful, and you want to say, if someone says, hey, I'm thinking about selling or I'm thinking about buying, what do you think? I can say, well, here are some of the things that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about this, and this. I think that we have to wait for this thing to happen, for market to react. The things that are happening right now may not. It may take some time for the dust to settle in terms of what the relationship is going to be to the market down the road. For instance, interest rates, as they change, they don't really you don't feel the effect for months, a couple of months. Same with what's happening with employment, those sort of things. So there are all these outside forces that weigh in on the market. And so what I try to do as a broker is to impress upon the agents to look at the big picture, look what's going on, not just locally, not just in the province or in Canada, but what's going on globally, because all those things will have an impact. What's happening with interest rates, what's happening with unemployment rates, what's happening with trade. What I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from agents is that people are a little bit concerned. They're taking that sort of wait and see approach, and so you have to then be able to talk to them in a different sort of tone. You have to be very educated on what's going on in the world. That really puts a different light on how it has been in the past, where an agent would win an offer by showing up with the biggest bag of money. That doesn't happen anymore. It's a negotiating. It's an education. It's you're having these constant conversations with your buyers or your sellers, and you're giving them constant updates about what's going on in the market. That's, to me, the most critical thing about our industry now. The agents that are going to win are the ones that are the most educated, that speak the best about what's going on in the market, have the most information possible, and can digest that information into bite-sized pieces that they can communicate then to their clients and really win them on their confidence. I think that one of the great things about KIC is in our name, right? Knowledge, integrity, community, and those are the things that I work on as a broker to really bring to the agents. Knowledge of the market, super important. Integrity, every meeting that I have, I go through sort of those things that agents do that get them in trouble all the time. And I try to reiterate, listen, to be a good agent actually doesn't require much more work than being a lousy agent. You can really up your game by just doing the basics, by being knowledgeable, but by being educated in the rules of the road. And so we look at all the things that have happened in organized real estate in Ontario, and your mind is blown by some of the missteps that brokers and agents do, and I want to try and avoid that. And so part of that is just being educating the agents and making sure that they are aware of what's going on. So from FinTrack to clear cooperation policy to what's going on at TREB to or any local boards. those things become really critical to our business. And so that's part of the integrity component of KIC Realty. So I think one of the things that separates us from a lot of other brokerages is this real commitment to our communities that we work in, and not only just the ones that we work in, but our community in general. When you operate a cloud brokerage, it's just that much harder to create a community in that, because people are all over the province and it's hard for them to get together. So when I do meetings, I ask them, hey, keep your camera on, and so that we can see your reaction, we can see your face, we can relate to you a little bit better. So that's part one of it. Part two is how that relationship with those agents works with their community, and I have lots of agents who do things like donate their time to shelters, or who work at food banks. I did some time at food banks, which was really great. And there's just so many more examples of that. But it seems like every single agent has taken a moment to give back to their communities, and I really appreciate that. It's funny that I always say that we work separately, but we also need to work together. And it's that old sort of saying, right? A rising tide lifts all boats, and I truly believe that in order for us to be really good agents, we need to give back. And so, there are situations where, let's say, an agent has a disagreement with another agent. Well, how can we work that out? Let's just not go to RICO, because if there's any fines, RICO just keeps the money. But what's the solution to dealing with a problem on a one-on-one basis? I'm a big fan of that. I think that there's so much that we can do as an organization. And so, I was talking to an agent not that long ago who said, I work alone, I work in a small community. My biggest challenge is I get so depressed because I don't have anyone to talk to. And I said, hey, start a mastermind group. Talk to the agents that you're working with, and have a discussion once a month. We do masterminds here at the office, and one of the most successful ones that I had was just I think it was last year, when I felt like January was a month that just kept on, was never ending, and I said, I'm losing my mind, I'm losing my patience, because it's one day after the next, it's never ending. And we had a really great conversation about how can we sort of change that narrative, how can we lift each other up, and let's just go out and have a drink or do whatever it is to build community. And Ron and I, who we work together in our office, we tend to we'll go out to the East End and we'll have lunch with people. And so it is. I think one of the great things about being small at this point is that we're small and powerful, which means really we can spend the time to connect with agents. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that almost every day, I try to call or email or text one agent or 5 agents and just say, hey, how's it going? What do you need? How can I help? How's your business going? What do you need from us just to make your life better? So that's the community part of KIC Realty. So people ask me all the time, what is KIC really about? And it's funny, because when we first came up with the name KIC, knowledge, integrity, community, that made a lot of sense, because that really defines kind of what we wanted to be and who we are as a company. But what sort of came as a side note to that was when we hired one of our first deal administrators, she said, oh, KIC Realty, that stands for Keep It Canadian. And I thought, oh my God, that's a perfect description, because we wanted to be this truly Canadian kind of company. We thought that was really what the country needed. Real estate has been around for hundreds of years, and there are these legacy companies that continue to exist. But I would say that they're shrinking. They're giving up a few realtors to other sort of new startups like us that are coming on the scene. And so, the reality is that we've taken a different approach to how we built a company, where, if you worked for a legacy broker, for instance, all the money that you make is going to generate profit for that owner. And what we wanted to do is really make every single agent an owner in our company, and that's been sort of the driving force of what we're trying to build. We wanted to create an environment where an agent could be an equity partner. They could earn more and more equity in the company as much as they wanted, really. And so what this means is that you sort of set up this retirement for yourself, and that's something that doesn't really exist in Canadian real estate. People can work for a company for 20 or 30 years, and when they decide, okay, well, today I'm going to retire, the manager or the deal administrator says, well, here's your last bill, have a nice day. And what we wanted to do was create an environment where an agent could reap the benefits of all those years of work that they created, and all that excitement and all that work and hard effort that they put into to building a legacy that would actually last. So I love that part. The other kind of thing about what's happening in sort of the general landscape of real estate is that a lot of U.S. companies, they come to Canada. Why? Well, if you think about it, we have 4, 5, 6 really very expensive urban areas. And so as a company, let's say in the United States, where I'm building a tiny, an office somewhere, in a small community, I have to spend a lot of money to get into that small community, where I can spend the same amount and come to Canada. So you see a lot of U.S. companies saying, the money is in Canada because our price points are so much higher, and so there's that aspect of it. And so what I say to agents, what they're saying to their clients is, look, you can go work, you could hire an agent from one of these big companies that's not Canadian, but you're going to be giving part of the profit that you make in that house is going to go south. Do you really want that, given sort of like the environment that we're in right now? I think that's super important. So we wanted to build this truly powerful, Canadian-centric, Canadian-owned, Canadian agents, Canadian tools, a company like that, but also keeps the profits here in Canada. I think that's super critical. Now, our model is sort of different from those traditional bricks and mortar models. I mean, we do work in the cloud, we do have revenue share, we do have share ownership, we do have all that, and we do share some of the same DNA as those other companies. But when those other companies launched, they didn't anticipate X, Y, and Z, and so they become so big that they can't course correct. And so what we are able to do is look at those companies and say, well, that's a great thing, but that's not so great. Can we fix that? And so, I would sort of consider us like that sort of third generation of that shared DNA model, where we've actually corrected those things. And so there's a lot of great tools that we've brought in, and I think at the end of the day, we built a better model for that is outside that sort of traditional bricks and mortar. A very, very exciting part of it. And I think that when you look at it and you look at all the successes of those other companies that we share the same DNA with, what you learn is that the people who are in early were the ones that made out like did very, very well. Made out like bandits, I should say. But they did very, very well. And so what we're trying to do is create that generational wealth for our agents. That's super important. Having some retirement savings, something that will build with them, and I think that's really what sort of brings us all together. We know that our company is better than the sum of its parts, because there's so much input from the agents that are helping us build that and saying, hey, what about this? What about that? Can we do this? Can we do that? And so when you have that kind of input into a company, then you're really creating something quite special, because you could go to a legacy broker and say, hey, I don't like this. Can you fix that? They'd be like, sorry, no. Or if you're going to, you're looking for to join another brokerage, and your first question is, how much of the company are you going to give me, or how much can I buy? They're going to say, nope, sorry, that's not how we work. And so, listen, I realize that this model is not for everybody, but I feel like if you are truly interested in building a future for yourself, and I don't know who wouldn't be, but if you're truly interested in building a business for yourself, then KIC, I think, is just one of those fairy tale stories that can only improve and get better every day. So every year, we did it last year, and we're going to do it again in April this year, is we're going to have our KIC Connect. And it's a conference where all the agents from across the country will come together and meet and learn and network. This year, it's going to be in Niagara Falls. Last year, it was in Banff. And what's really interesting about these events is that these are really strangers who come together with this sort of shared belief in what we're building, which I think is amazing. But more importantly, we actually, because we're so sort of transparent, we talk about the direction of the company. We share the successes. We share, okay, well, this didn't work, some of the failures that we had, and so you really do feel connected. And if you went to again, I'll talk about those bricks and mortar brokerages. If you went to a small bricks and mortar brokerage and you said, "Hey, let me see your finances. Let me get a look under the kimono," the broker's going to say no chance. And so again, because you're an owner, we want to be ultimately very transparent. And so sharing that trajectory, sharing the numbers, sharing our growth strategies is so important to us. And I think people really come to appreciate that ultimate transparency that we as a management team give to our agents. So I think 2026 is going to be a really interesting year. The holdback for 2025 has been that people have they're kind of questioning, where's the world going? And so the consumer confidence just isn't there. But there are a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers sitting on the sidelines. They're just kind of waiting. When's the time right? Are rates going to come down? What I like to say is that if you're thinking about buying a house, for instance, you really want three things to come into alignment. You want to have a ton of choice. You don't want to have anybody else bidding against you, and you want low mortgage rates. Those are the three things that you ultimately want. Low rates mean that you're not going to pay much for it, and So the reality is that all those three things can never be on at the same time. You can't have lots of choice, low rates, right, and no competition. That doesn't exist. So pick the ones that you can live with. And so I say to agents, look, there's a lot of choice right now. You've got time to make up your mind and look at a place or buy a place. You've got very little competition. That's a good thing. The only thing that really stops people right now is the interest rates, and that's really driven by sort of consumer confidence. And so what I would tell you is that we've seen not historical highs, but we've seen the rates going up and starting to come down. Now, will they come down some more? If you look at the big six banks, they would say no one can agree on anything. Some will say yes, the rates are going to come down. Some will say yes, the rates are going to stay high. Some will say they're not going to change. But the reality is that there's a lot of outside pressure. I still think that the rates are going to come down. As someone who has to renegotiate my mortgage next month, I'm looking at variable again for the very first time, because I think that that's how I see it. Now I could be 100% wrong, and I got a mortgage that I can lock in whenever. But again, it turns into this sort of idea that you marry the house and you date the interest rate, and so you can get a mortgage where that interest rate can be locked in. If you want to do variable for now and then change course down the road, you can do that. So that's one thing. Will the market improve? That's the big question out there. Now, in terms of, let's say, condo sales, new construction, I think that that's going to take a little bit more time. But what I will say is that if you are thinking about buying a condo right now as an investment, that won't be completed for 4 or 5 years, what's the market going to be like 4 or 5 years from now? Because if no one's building and immigration, even at a trickle, is still building up some steam in Canada, in 5 years from now, we're going to have a lot of people looking for homes, and that's going to, especially if there's no new condos being constructed, that's going to really put things out of balance. And so you're going to have lots of demand and very little supply. That's going to drive prices out. That's a fundamental. I think that everyone would agree on that. I also think that in a market such as today, where prices are down, the one thing to sort of consider is that if I live in a $1 million house and the prices have gone down 10%, I've lost $100,000. But if I buy a $2 million house, the price has actually gone down $200,000. So I've actually, I'm ahead. If I move up by $1 million, I'm ahead by $100,000. So sort of something to think about. That's how math works in real estate. But it may not be 100% accurate, but I guess the point is that the best time to move up is in a down market, and so I can certainly remember a time when you'd be moving up, and the prices are going up, and you'd have to try and almost jump to the next level in order to get a house, and I talk to agents who say, like, I can't get my guy to come up to where he needs to be, and I would say, this happens all the time, but you'll price yourself out of the market, because if you want to buy a house on a street that's $500,000 and there's a lot of bidders, you need to jump to 600 very quickly, because the next house that comes on the market is going to be 600 and it's going to jump to 700, and so you want to try and get ahead of those jumps, if that makes sense. It's a very unique market that we live in today. I think that it's going to go up, and let's face facts, and probably a lot of people don't know this, but real estate is cyclical. It goes up, it goes down. It's always done that for years and years and years. What we have gone through is one of the longest periods of expansion. And so, I'd always say that the longer you go, the bigger the fall, but it's going to come back up again. And that's critical. And, no other entity builds wealth in a tax-free environment like owning a house. And let's be honest, there's so much research out there that shows that people who own a house, they're healthier, they're happier, their kids get better educated, and on top of that, their kids are more likely to own as a result of their parents owning. And so you are building this sort of generational wealth. And today there are tools to help people get into the market: co-ownership, rent to own. There are new tools that are coming up, new technologies that will help people get into housing, and I think that's critical. We should all aspire. And one of the reasons why I love being in real estate is that I'm sort of the person that will help set up somebody for success down the road. I love that aspect of it. And I say to the agents, look at you build relationships in this business. One step at a time. If you don't sell them a house today, that's okay. You just stay in touch. You'll sell them a house tomorrow, or a month from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. You build up those relationships. This is a relationship business, and we're doing remarkable things for our clients. And there'll be always people who say, I don't need an agent, and that's totally fine. Take your chances, roll the dice. But for people who want to have a good, solid transaction, then using an agent makes so much sense. And on top of that, it's insured. So why wouldn't you do that? So my message to all the KIC agents out there is just keep improving yourself, keep learning, keep networking, keep talking, keep building community, keep reaching out to your past clients. It's about these relationships that we build and nurture over time. You always will succeed by going back to the basics, calling past clients, inviting them out for coffee, do whatever it takes. Just those little tiny touches. Sometimes it doesn't take much. I remember getting a book from an agent, and it was a book that he picked up at a flea market. But it was I'm a sailor. It was all about sailing, and it was a book I would probably never buy or even look at. But it was the sheer fact that he saw this book, probably paid $5 for it, and sent it to me, and it was all about historical boating. And he said, "Hey, I saw this book. I was thinking of you, and I wanted to just send it to you." And so these little acts of kindness, they make a remarkable impact on all our clients. And so every day work on those. What can I do today for those little acts of kindness that will help my clients, keep me sort of front and center? So that's my biggest message. And you can always, there's no limit to the amount that you can learn. And so while you are sort of waiting for the market to improve, keep learning. And my sort of big comment is the market will rebound. And so what we do today will sort of impact that. So stick around for the rebound. So they say that 2026 will be a defining year or sort of a transitional year. I totally believe that. And we need to obviously work on the things that will help us improve. I go back to 2008 at the sort of the dawn of the great financial crisis in the United States. And, at that time, I went to a conference, a real estate conference in the US, and it was sort of really around the time that sort of Facebook and Instagram were just coming up, these sort of new technologies. And people were talking about how are these new technologies going to help us find new clients moving forward. And what we've seen is, the great work that really good agents have done to create, personas on Instagram and on Facebook, and I think that's amazing. What's happening right now is that we are at the dawn of another major shift in how we do business, and that is AI. And what I would say is that, look, AI is not going to replace us. It's going to create or help us create the tools to make our business better and stay more connected. And so, my wish for 2026 is that agents really learn how to embrace the benefits of AI. Think of it that way. There will be agents who say, that's just too much. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to do it. I can't do it. I don't know enough about it. Read something about it. Learn more about it, because otherwise you sort of get left at the side of the road. Other agents are going to take it on, and they're going to really excel as a result. So AI, I think, is going to change. It's going to change the nature of the game, not just for agents, but for consumers too. And so you want to make sure that when a consumer asks Google, who's the best agent in my neighborhood, that your name is front and center. So do the things that will put your name front and center. The other thing is, there are a lot of tools that we don't use enough of. I think that video, in terms of using YouTube, become very, very important to us. And the things that you want to talk about to your clients are market information, stuff that people can use. How do I get more money for my house? How should I market my home? What are the best neighborhoods? What brings me to this neighborhood? These are things that any good agent should be doing on a regular basis. I realize that we don't all have a face for video, but even I succeed at times, and so that's a good thing. Just keep on keeping on. It's going to be a really great year. This will be the year that you will shine as a realtor. So my name is Mark McLean. I'm the broker of record here at KIC Realty in Ontario. I've been a realtor for over 30 years. I was president of the Toronto Real Estate Board. I was director at Ontario Real Estate Association. And my job is to tell people about KIC. We're trying to build a new type of real estate that will help agents grow their business, grow into retirement, create generational wealth for them. You're probably going to have a lot of questions about us, and I'm here to answer those questions. You can find me on YouTube, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over the place, or you can visit our website and get a link to contact me directly. I'm open to any conversations that you might want to have. If you have questions, I'm here to answer. Have a great day.